Thank you for joining us this week on Everyone's a Little Queer. We have a special guest this week, Noah May, who is the host of the Lethal Venom podcast. Now, as we usually do, there are talks in this podcast of bullying, mental health struggles, isolation, as well as suicidal talks. If you or someone you know that is struggling with any of these, please seek immediate help. For suicidal thoughts, you can reach out to the suicide hotline at 988. Thank you. Please enjoy, at your discretion, this episode with Noah May of the Lethal Venom podcast. Let's talk some gay shit. Let's do it. Everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Everyone's a Little Queer. We are joined by the host of the Lethal Venom podcast. And if you love the most random things to talk about, where everything is on the table, from psychedelics to mental health to sexual history to everything, Noah May's podcast is going to be for you. Noah, welcome to Everyone's a Little Queer. How are you today?
I'm doing good. It's a lovely Wednesday. We're halfway through the week, and I'm doing really good today.
Excellent. Yeah, everybody loves a good hump day, right?
Yeah, it's always that. For me, it's a halfway point to the weekend, so I'm just like, oh, 2 more days.
There you go. I know today what's Wednesday, so this is my Saturday. So I'm living my Saturday right now and in the middle of the week here. Well, welcome. I'm so excited to have you. I've loved your podcast. The guests that you have on there are so just informative, and the topics that you range on the Lethal Venom podcast, I don't think there is a topic that has been off topic at all through your podcast. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, that's been one of the good things about having like guests come on is that I've had the most crazy experiences with guests because with the general basis of my show, it's very much random. I wanted the podcast to not really fit a particular niche. I wanted it to be kind of more random, chaotic. There was one time in one day I did like 4 recordings in one day, and every guest had 5 like different things. I had like I think someone that was really religious come on, and then I had like a phone sex operator come on next.
Yeah.
It was just like the most random. So it's I love to keep the randomness of the podcast because it doesn't really give out, or I don't really lose ideas. At first, my show was solo because I was like, I had a lot to say when I first started the podcast, a lot of from my past, but then after a while, a lot of those solo episode ideas were like, I'm running out of ideas here.
Yeah.
And so having guests come on actually saved the podcast, really. So
oh, good. Yeah.
It's still pumping out episodes. I've got so much on back file ready to post, and I just have guests every day come on, and it's been a really good experience. Have enjoyed doing podcasting.
I love it. Yeah. Well, before we jump further into that, we got to get to know Noah a little bit here. Noah, and listeners, if you don't know, Noah does have a little Southern twang to them. So growing up in Alabama and through your queer life, I want to talk about that. So when was the first experience you had where, you were like, well, maybe I'm not like my neighbors here. Maybe something's a little different.
For me, it was when I was in 8th grade. 8th grade for me was just kind of like a huge turning point. I had a lot of things happen to me that year. It was just personally, and then it was just all toppled on one another. And I kind of found pornography during that time. And of course, if you've ever been introduced to pornography before, it's just like a huge whirlwind of things you see. It was just like mind completely blown. So I was like, oh, let me see what this is.
So I got to ask, did you start with like a straight porn? Was that like what you fell into first, and then kind of led your way into different kind of experimentation with that?
I'm trying to think how I got addicted to it and found it was just like the most nonchalant way. It was one of those things where I look back at it now and I know what they did. It was basically one of those pictures where they Photoshop a celebrity's head on a body.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of what it was. Because I wasn't even looking any of that up at that point. That was just a random pic that just came on, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So that's how it started. And then I can't really pinpoint like how I found the pornography sites at the time, but I think it led from the videos that you would find that would be under like the video section on Google or Bing at the time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how those started. I don't know. I think I did more like solo, if I remember correctly. I think that's what I was really interested in at the time, was solo. Now, I never did anything, like never practiced anything. I was just like visually learning.
Yeah.
That was kind of like my introduction to it. I didn't really
Right.
try all these like, oh, buy all the toys, buy all this stuff and everything. So I was like, I just watch it. I learned a lot during that time.
Yeah.
I learned a
Yeah.
lot. I was like,
I like to say that, when people start talking about pornography and stuff, I especially, every now and then someone will say, "Oh, I think there's a porn category for that." And I look at them and I always say, "No, we call those documentaries. I've seen that documentary, because I'm like, it's a learning experience. Not all porn is, just entertainment. Some of it can be educational, especially as you're trying to figure out what it is about you and where you want to be."
yeah. And, I obviously did not know like the hardcore signs of like what to do and not to do when you're watching
Yeah.
pornography
Yeah.
because I was a noob at it. At the time, I came from a very strict household. I wasn't able to watch anything above PG. It
Oh,
was
wow.
basically like,
Okay. So was it like a religious household as well?
I grew up in church growing up, but we
Okay.
weren't like strictly religious at all, really.
Yeah.
They just didn't want me to be introduced to a lot of the bad things like profanity, violence,
Okay.
sexual stuff on TV. They
Yeah.
wanted me to kind of experience that later on in life,
Gotcha.
not at 13.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when you're around a group of kids that already talk like they're R-rated NC-17, it's hard to not hear
Yeah.
it or
Yeah.
like kind of censor yourself from it. So I mean, at that point, I was already introduced to so many things at that point, and had heard so many things. It was just my innocence was gone at that
Yeah.
point.
Well, and I think parents forget that like we have friends outside of the house and in school and in sometimes, especially in public school, you're going to learn. I say especially public school, but I have some friends who went to private school, and there's just some of the kinkiest motherfuckers I've ever met in my life. And they knew a lot more than I did before I knew it.
Yeah, a lot of my classmates actually started like I think having sex at like 12 or 13. I'm just like,
Oh, that's wild.
so,
Yeah.
so, which we never, and I gotta
Yeah.
give them props. We never had someone like get pregnant early on, which was surprising for my grade, for my
Yeah.
class that I was in, because my class
Yeah.
was something.
They provocative
I,
little sluts.
yeah, they were
Yeah.
very provocative. So, but one of the guidelines apparently that you're not supposed to do when you're watching pornography is you're not supposed to watch it in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
I look back at it and I'm like, you know what? Yes, I was a noob at that. That was a lesson
Yeah.
I learned from it. But when I first got into it, it became a hardcore addiction. Like it started becoming a problem. And I was really wanting to just watch it all the time. I didn't really want to focus on schoolwork at all during that point. So I mean, that's when I knew that I did have a problem with it. And you get caught, even if you are addicted to it or not, it's not a fun experience to have to go
Yeah.
through because you have to explain it and everything. But I knew that I had a problem because it started getting to the point where I was like, ooh, I don't want to do anything but watch this all day,
Yeah.
24/7. I would be staying up late at night watching it on my phone, and I also would be on my computer watching it. So I knew I had a problem at that point,
Yeah.
but it was also this fascination of like never had seen this stuff before and had never learned any of this. So it was just like my brain was introduced to a whole new realm of a fantasy world that I never had really experienced at
Yeah.
all. So there was this, I became addicted. I'm less addicted to it now. Like I only use it when I'm,
Yeah.
what is
It
none of
it
that?
fills the gaps, right? Like,
Right. It
yeah.
fills the
It's
gap. I'm not like heavily addicted to it like I used to be anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there may be something too there of saying like, when you grow up in such a household that kind of pushes off so many things, right? Where it
Mm.
kind of shelters you so much, and then you start to get a little bit of freedom, and then you use that freedom and it go a little bit extreme on it because you don't know how to tailor that. You don't know how to throttle that freedom in a safe, healthy way. You can have kind of these addictions, whether it be drugs, alcohol, pornography, even like sexual addiction,
Mhm.
is very prominent in the queer community. And you have to have a healthy relationship with understanding the risks, but also like what is acceptable with it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said there too. Some people, it's like a hardcore drug when if you let it be a hardcore
Yeah.
drug, it's, there is a point where you can stop early on before it becomes a hardcore addiction, but it kind of hooks your brain into like this is like everything new to me. And It was just
Yeah.
feeding off of it. And then the thing with pornography, there's so many subcategories.
Yeah.
There's always like main one, but then there's always like subcategories of that, and then of the subcategories, there's even more subcategories of that. It's just like a pyramid that kind of just keeps getting more particular and particular on there. So it was just, you really would go down. I would always go down rabbit holes. And
Yeah.
this wasn't something I learned first off. It was kind of later on as I was starting to use pornography more for like sexual needs and everything like that. It wasn't until I found those subcategories I was like, there's
Well,
like a lot of things out there.
yeah. Well, and it hits that dopamine. That dopamine is a hell of a drug, isn't it? And
Uh-huh.
when you find something and you're like, and you get like, if you watch something so many times, you're like, that's great. And then you find the same thing, but a little tweaked, it re-releases that new dopamine level. And now it's that pit of dopamine release that you crave, that you need for it.
Yeah, the dopamine levels during that time were high.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were very, very high.
Yeah. Well, and so is this kind of what led a little bit to like a queer awakening for you, or like an awakening inside you of like you started seeing more of what you liked or what you didn't like?
Yeah, I was kind of a mixture of straight and gay porn at the time. It was just kind of a mix to see what was
Yeah.
out there. And also a lot of the TV shows that I was watching too at the time on, the main networks that were maybe a little graphic to be shown.
Yeah.
But that a lot of those were just like, wait a
Yeah.
minute. It kind of sparked that interest in there. It didn't help with like triggering like what I really liked at the time.
Yeah.
For the long I was pretty much innocent the longest time, and then at 13, it just everything changed. It, I think, started answering questions about what I preferred or what I didn't prefer at the time, but I also wasn't really adventurous during that time. It wasn't until when I got way, way, way older in college when I started to kind of explore what I liked and didn't like. I very much was just more the virtual side of
Yeah.
attracted to it. It wasn't until about, I want to say like 19 or 20 till I started like trying, seeing what I liked and didn't like with others, what other people. That was
Okay.
kind of when I started really exploration. But yeah, the pornography was a start of like
Yeah.
seeing what I liked and did not like during that time.
So you growing up as 13, you get introduced to pornography. Did you grow up in a smaller town? I guess I asked, because if you don't have a lot of people or a lot of adolescents your age, teenagers your age that are also kind of in the same boat of experimentation, you are left to just the internet, right? And
Hmm.
so were there like other people around that you talked to that were like they were like, I've also watched this. Is that what led to that? Or was it just like, I'm going full in and then you just get that dopamine hit at a young age with it?
Well, my relationship with my classmates was not the best.
Fair.
They basically saw me as an outcast and kind of like a ghost. I
Yeah.
just was like a walking orb of like, I could come up to them and start talking to them and they're like, did y'all hear that? Is there a noise? That's how they treated me. And so I didn't have those conversations with them during that time. Now, did I learn a lot about pornography from them? Yes.
Yeah.
But I never really talked or heard anything about, there was a lot of things that I learned from them. But when it came to me asking those questions, I didn't really reach out and ask them because I thought, well, they're not going to listen to me or even take time to explain anything to me anyway. So I thought it's better if I learn it myself or just, Google it if I need to.
Yeah.
So I knew that they were watching probably pornography at the time and even probably were trying sexual stuff at the time, but we never really talked about it as much, like private one-on-one conversations about it. There was a lot of questions I had about it, but again, had really no one to talk to about it. So it was just a lot of either just not knowing, maybe later in life I'll learn about it, or it was just if they happen to mention it, I might just listen in to see what they
Right.
say. But yeah, my relationship with my classmates was not the best, so
Yeah.
there was really no point.
So when you grow up a little bit more, we get into college now, and you said you kind of got to start to do that experimentation, that exploration a little bit. What was that like growing? I mean, through college, where because you went to Auburn, right? And so Auburn is a huge college. I mean, you get, I'm sure, all walks of life of different people and backgrounds and everything. So what was that like then, kind of going into the college years for you?
Well, college for me was interesting because I was right at the beginning of the pandemic. So I was a COVID child when I first started college. We were in the height of the pandemic during that time. And I actually went to a community college. You come from a small town that was like 1,000 or 2,000 people. So, I mean, everyone, it's one of those towns where everyone knows everyone.
Yeah,
And
can't get
like,
away with anything there.
you can't really get away with anything.
Yeah,
If something major happens with you, you're the topic for about the next month or two. And so I went to my community college in my small town, kind of more of the hybrid in person, but mostly remote.
yeah,
And that was kind of during that time after we had graduated from high school. I started kind of getting more friends outside of my initial circle of like where I lived. I used to only be friends and follow people that I knew personally or that were kind of like in the same county as me. So like you had to
yeah,
live within like a 5-10 mile radius of me.
sure.
So when I started college, I kind of started spreading the circle out very slowly to kind of get some more people in there because I did get to a point where I did get lonely at that time. And all my high school friends, basically, after we graduated, were like deuces to me, never really
Yeah,
talked to me ever. So I was like, I got very lonely and like, I just was like, I just want some friends. So,
yeah,
I went on social media, followed some people, and started kind of reaching out to others, seeing if they would even give me a chance of talking or whatnot. And that was kind of when I started exploration. I started sending like nude photos at that point. But
yeah,
I like to give myself credit that I did wait till I was 18. I think it wasn't until I was actually 19 when I started doing stuff. So
yeah,
I give a lot of my like credit that I did
yeah,
wait till I was an adult. I didn't wait till I was 16 or 17 or, younger than that of doing any of these kind of stuff. So I was like, I don't feel guilty waiting as long as I did.
right.
But I was kind of it was kind of a forceful thing, not like kind of a rapey way. I don't want people to think, oh, you're
Yeah.
taking advantage of the person I was talking to really wanted me to send nudes and I've never done that before. And so when you're doing that, you are nervous as I'll get out.
Oh,
I broke out into this awful sweat. My face turned bright red. I just got real nervous all of a sudden. But so that was kind of the first thing I think I did, kind of outside of pornography, was send a nude. That was kind of the first thing that I did.
yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, the first time you're sharing yourself exposed in a way, it's a scary thought. It's a scary feeling of like, oh my God, like this is gonna go out there. You're gonna have no, and I think subconsciously our body knows like you're gonna have no control over what happens after you hit the send button, right?
Hmm.
And so, yeah, definitely, especially at a young age, 18, 19 years old, you're still so young. I mean, although we classify that as an adult and we give you a loan to go spend however much money you want in school,
Right.
you're still not an adult. You still haven't even experienced life. And so it can't, especially, was this person an older person? Is that kind of a little bit of on the back side of that?
He maybe about a year or two older than me. They weren't that
Yeah.
significantly older.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, even then, because in the
Hmm.
queer community, we have a lot of, where you have younger people that do date older people. And especially, I mean, I've heard stories of younger people and they're like 16s kind of lying about how old they are in the queer community and dating these older men, 30s, 40s and stuff. And there is a little bit of a pressure from there because also you look at that person who's older and say, oh, you have more experience than I do, or oh,
Right.
you've done more than I have. And so this must be okay. And now you feel that pressure of being okay. And it's not okay. You should only be doing what you're comfortable with.
Yeah, it's being having a lot of people that are part of the LGBT community. At that point, I didn't know who I wanted my friend group to really be
Yeah.
because I really didn't fit in with anyone. We didn't have a lot of queer kids that went to my school personally, and it was very interesting too because it was a lot of my friends now are thinking that, oh, you probably were hit up all the time by so many cute people and everything. I said no.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, I was like, no,
I,
no one ever reached out to me like girls,
yeah.
guys, no one, even older or younger than me, never reached out to be like, oh my God, you're so cute. I was like, when I tell you I was an outcast by them, I was an outcast. I was
Yeah.
like, no one ever reached out to me of like wanting to go on a date or anything. So I was just in my own little bubble, in my own little universe growing throughout high school. Looking back at it is interesting that, they had the assumption that I was queer at the time
Yeah,
because of just how I talked and how I acted. I was being called gay when I was like in fifth grade and before I even knew what it was because
sure.
apparently I walked funny down the hallway.
Yeah. No, I've gotten that as well. I've gotten you mean the person that walks a little bit like a woman? And I'm like, what do you fucking mean? I'm walking. What does it matter? What does a woman walk look like? I get it. Yeah, absolutely.
So they were bullying about that. I think they just all assumed.
Yeah.
It was my voice never really got deepened when puberty hit. I think puberty might have skipped me in that department,
Yeah.
but and other things that did not skip. But there were some
Yeah.
aspects of puberty that did not stick like land with me. So
Yeah.
I think that they just knew they have that assumption, and I think they really want that assumption to be true.
Oh,
So
yeah.
where they just kind of proclaim that I am. I feel like if I happen to were to come out or anything like, if I said I was like queer, trans, bi, or anything at that point, they would not be surprised. It would be one of those things of like, we've known that for years.
Yeah.
And, it would just be like this very anticlimactic thing of coming out. So,
Yeah.
and I think even if I did, some of them would have been like, what's your name again? Because
Yeah.
they just didn't see any of this. They see a little bit more of me now since I do podcasting, and I've talked about them on the podcast, not in
Yeah.
good ways, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, when you grow up and somebody is kind of being a dickhead to you, it's okay to call that person out for being a dickhead, especially if you're on your own podcast, you're in your own space, and you have, we all have that alienable right of the First Amendment of speech. And look,
right.
you're being a dick. You were a dickhead. I'm gonna because there's a lot of scarring that happens, right? When we grow up in those formidable years of people alienating other people, and those people that, as you said, looked at you like a ghost, and they said, "Oh, who did you hear something? Did you hear that? What? Just a
Right.
fucking asshole thing." Now, don't get me wrong, kids are just fucking dicks, but when you are alienating and bullying somebody, we talk about consequences in this world. And sometimes there's actions have consequences, and it might not be an instant karma kind of thing, but it might be 5-10 years down the line when Noah has a podcast and says, yeah, I have this experience. This person was an asshole, and there you are.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was really worried about when I started doing the podcast, was like because I wanted to share my experience with my classmates about what life was like growing up with them, what I endured and kind of experienced. And obviously, in the episode, I don't personally say their name. I don't call them out. I say their name on the podcast, but I do censor it out in the episodes.
Oh.
The whole episode, it's just,
Yeah.
these like bleep sounds and everything.
Sure.
But I knew, for me personally, in the back of my mind, I knew that I would know who I'm talking about. It was kind of a guessing game for them to kind of use their brains, even though they didn't really use them to begin with. It was just kind of like a little bit of a brain power for them. But that was the most therapeutic, was honestly telling them off. And really just being open and honest about how they treated me, how they have done, really how badly that they treated me. It's funny. I always look at it as like, once I graduated, I went through a really hard time with my mental health. I really almost committed suicide at one point. And now I have a good podcast that's come out. And, I'm not really one of those people that brags so much about it. And I hate bragging a little bit about this because it makes me sound cocky and all this. But for people that never experienced what I went through, I think if you witness what I went through, I think you would be like, yeah, you have a right to be cocky and to brag and showcase all your accomplishments about what you've been through. I think you have that voice and opportunity to do that.
Well, even the fact that you're sitting here today, Noah, after admitting with the mental health struggles and, the possibility of suicide, the fact that you're sitting here, brag about it, girl. Like, we are here, you are here, and we appreciate the fact and we love the fact that you are here. When you grow up in a world, even a small town, especially these small towns in the South, there's a lot. You said everybody knows everybody, and then they know who you are, and they know who you are, and so they alienate you, and you kind of have that lonely feeling. And then, as you said, you started college in the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, where you felt lonely there. All of this stuff, it does weigh on us as people. Our mental health can only take so much. and to see where you're at now, and to see, especially again, we're gonna plug it right now. But if you have not listened to the Lethal Venom podcast, the amount of guests that you have on there, the stuff that you talk about, the openness that you talk about is only happening because somebody like you said, you know what, I went through all of these struggles. I did this. I was there, but I'm going to be better. And now look where you're at. I mean, it's an amazing podcast, and I've enjoyed it's I chuckle at it, I laugh at it, I've cried at it. It's a great podcast. And I think what you're doing for people is showing that with these mental health struggles, with the thoughts of suicide, with the loneliness feeling, you can overcome, and you can be healthy. And look where you're at.
Yeah, it's been a huge therapeutic process for me. I did therapy for the longest time, and I was kind of anti-therapy at that time because I thought, oh, therapist is only for crazy people. I'm not that crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not that, I'm not at that point yet.
We're all a
But
little crazy, but in good ways.
but I came to realize that no, it's everyday people going there. Media does not do a good job, especially in the film and like movies, TV show industry. They do a very poor job of portraying what an actual therapist's office and even a psychiatrist's office looks like. Every office that I've been in, you would just look around and you just would not think just from the appearance. I'm all about like, I could look at you and be like, yeah, I can just tell from how you look. There've been some times where I've looked in there and it's like, they just look so young.
Yeah.
I've seen people that have families in there and, you just look around and you just are just like, you never would think that someone young would be in here at that age already.
Yeah.
Going through so many things. And I think media does an awful job portraying what the doctor's office looks like. Think of it as like a normal doctor's office. You see families in there.
Right.
Hardworking people that have really good paying jobs in there. It's just like everyday people that you would not think would be going through something traumatic or something very dark. And I didn't really learn this until I went to college as well, because our school had therapy provided to us. That was kind of like free therapy for us.
Okay.
And that's when you really start to notice of like, oh, because there was a lot of kids I looked at, I'm just like, how's you even in here? You look like you wouldn't be going through something. So it was at that point where I saw that, therapy is for everyone. I wish therapy was free for everyone. I wish that was one thing in life that we got for free because of how beneficial it is and how good it is to so many people. It's helped me personally. But when I started doing the podcast, all those early episodes I did, those were probably the most therapeutic episodes I've ever done. It was just like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders and chest for such a long time.
What got you started into that then? Did you wake up one day and you're like, I'm going to just start talking about everything. I'm going to open it up and here we fucking go. Let's do it.
Literally.
Yeah.
That's literally how it kind
Okay.
of all went down. I was either a freshman or sophomore in college. It was right when I first started college.
Yeah.
I would say about 2021, probably around that. Yeah, it was 2021. I just woke up and, I kind of had a general idea of what podcasts were, and podcasts started, especially during the pandemic, started getting a lot of attention and hype of like, oh, this is like the new way of entertainment. So podcasts really started taking off at that point. And I thought, well, I feel like at that point I was like, I could do a podcast, maybe an episode or two about what I've been through. Because at that point I started becoming a little bit more vocal about my mental health struggles and, was opening up about what I was going through and not feel shameful of it.
Yeah.
So I was like, I could do a podcast. I feel like I could do it. But I had no clue how a podcast worked at all.
Yeah.
I had no clue.
It's a lot of learning. It's a learning curve for sure.
There was a lot of learning that I had to learn and looked up. So I went online, of course, Googled podcast tips and tried to, and I couldn't find like a good website that would explain it. It was like, it kind of built up to where they were about to explain it. And then it kind of just fell flat of like, I read all that for nothing. It was just that kind of information. It wasn't until I went to Auburn and we had a guy that came to talk to one of our classes, because if anyone knows, if you're in college, you have speakers that come to your class. Usually about classes that they're offering or anything, especially in journalism. That happened it seemed like
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
We had someone come to talk about a class that they're opening up or interested in. And this guy came and said, I am wanting to do, I'm starting a podcasting class here. And when I perked up in my seat, when they came in and said podcast, I was like, I'm up, I'm awake. That wanted
Yeah.
me. And he had mentioned that he was starting a podcasting class and that if you were interested in wanting to attend next fall, to sign up for it with your advisor. I went to my advisor so fast and I was
Yeah.
just like, I will shoot people down.
Yeah.
I will mow people down to get in this class. I will do anything I can to where I'm first person to be in that
Right.
class. Luckily, I didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
I was able to get in there and I learned a lot of good tips and tricks from the professor in there about podcasting, kind of started learning a little bit about editing and microphones. And it was just a really good experience. And it was a really good class, a step in the right direction of like,
Good.
okay, here's a speed bump, or like, here's me going up the ladder. I'm starting to
Yeah.
kind of make that progress up the ladder. So once the class got done, there was still a lot of things that I needed to kind of know that didn't get answered. And over the next year, I really just focused in on working it. And in beginning of last year, I had launched a podcast on the platforms where you could find it if you looked it up, and
Yeah.
it kind of was trademarked and everything. I didn't start posting episodes till February of last year. And since then, it just took off.
Yeah.
You know, podcasting is just like how social media works. You never know how well a thing's going to go or how well it's going to do over time. You know, at first it was just like, oh, my friends would be listening to it, you know, just because I told them to, or else they'd be shot. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you'd be like, listen to this episode.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Give me a listen. Give me another tick on the mark there.
so that's just kind of who was my audience. And then it started expanding a little bit more and started getting worldwide attention. Like I've been looked at, I think my analytics, and I think my podcast has been heard in 80 countries. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And some of these, I'm like, I don't fully understand how y'all are understanding what I'm saying, but I appreciate for this. You know, it's just like, because I've had people like Vietnam. Apparently, Vietnam is really popular right now, and Pop-In is like the
There you go.
country
Yeah.
overseas that's really into the podcast right now. Japan, I've been heard in Japan. Lord, if I start naming places off, I'll leave out 500.
Yeah.
But a lot of the major continents and countries, I've basically have at least one person's heard it.
Yeah.
You know, one person I had on the show is like, you know, a lot of people that are listening to your show outside usually use it for English learning. And I thought, I'm the last person to be learning English.
Yeah.
No.
They're all gonna
So you-
they're all gonna come, start speaking English with a little Southern twang to them,
I thought, now I may have studied journalism and I have my bachelor's in journalism. I'm the last person to learn English from
Yeah.
because I have Southern accent in there and thick country
Yeah.
language in there. I said, I'm not the best person learning English from.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other good podcasts out there that have really good proper English and, you know, are very professional. I'm like, it's an honor that maybe they're wanting to learn English from me. I'm just like, no.
Hey, you know
I'm
what?
not the person.
Yeah.
I'm
Hey,
not the person.
who knew that you're helping so many people on so many different fronts,
Yeah, and it's been crazy about how the podcast really has just blown up in the past year. It's been crazy. You know, it was wild.
Absolutely. So your Lethal Venom podcast, what really was when you start a podcast here, as a queer person, we always think of, okay, what is something we can do to kind of accentuate ourselves, but also not like throw it in somebody's face, right? Unless you come to the Everyone's a Little Queer podcast where this is just like the gayest shit we're going to have here. And that's the point of our podcast. But when you start with the Lethal Venom podcast, I mean, you look at the name Lethal Venom and you don't think at all anything about what your podcast is about. What was the driving force behind you saying, you know what, I just want to have almost every topic. I want nothing left on the table. We're going to take it all and we're going to do it all.
It honestly came from just being silenced all my life from my peers and just not really having a voice. That's really all the aspect of why I wanted to do this podcast. A lot of my earlier episodes that I posted were just personal solo episodes, and it was just telling about my life at that point. I talked about an in-depth thing about my mental health. I talked about my classmates and how they treated me. I talked about my work experience, school experience, I mean, a lot of them were just personal things that I had kept bottled up for years that no one really wanted to hear. And I thought, what other good opportunity to do it than to be on a podcast and be on this show. So a lot of the earlier episodes were more of this is what I'm going through. This is what my podcast is stemmed off of. This is my life
Yeah.
story in a nutshell. I talked also about my relationship that I had with my father at the time. And, though that was a lot of people are like, why'd you post that episode on Father's Day? And I thought, well, I don't have a good relationship with him. Actually, don't even know who my father is at this point. And so I posted it just to help others out there. And a lot of people really love the vulnerability I get on some of these episodes of like, whoa, he really tells it like it is. He's
Yeah.
not scared about what others might say about it, or he just tells it like it is and just puts it on the line. So it just really stemmed from just being quiet and silenced all my life. I was like, I've had enough. I want people to know the truth
Yeah.
about what I've been through. And that's just how Lethal Venom was born. It just was a lot of good. It was just a lot of personal episodes that just kind of blew up into a whole different thing.
So when you say you don't have we know you post that episode about on Father's Day about your father. Now, how's the relationship with your mother then? Are you guys close or, because being in the South, I'm always curious about this. Southern United States definitely is very much more conservative, right? Much more kind of that Southern Baptist conservative lifestyle, right? Now, how's your relationship with you on your mom's side or, anything like that? Has that grown better because of how open now you're just like, fuck it, we're talking, we're doing it? Or has it been stagnant?
I always had a close relationship with my mom, and ever since I am her only child, a lot of her attention and care really just comes on me. I'm kind of the only main force of thing that keeps her going, even though I've put gray hairs on her head.
Yeah.
But me and her have a really good relationship. She had questions early on, and she wouldn't badger me about it. She started asking questions about when I was around 13 or 14. As you can tell, 13 was a great time for me.
Yeah. I'm like 13 is like our year right here, magic 13.
Yeah. So 13 years old was just prime time for me. But she would just ask questions. At the time, it was always like, no, but
yeah.
We started, I think, when I was 18, had a really in-depth conversation about just what I was going through, and she was accepted of it. I think she wants me to marry a woman, and, I want to have kids because I want to show my kids that a father stays in their life and whatnot. I want to do
right
for what my father didn't do. I was kind of conceived through a sexual assault, and so I never knew who my father was at that point. We still don't know to this day who he was at all. I want to have kids to show that, to give them what I didn't have, because I wouldn't want, if I had kids, whenever I do have kids, I don't want them to not have both parents in their life. I couldn't imagine. So, maybe a lot of who I am today maybe has come from I didn't have that father figure in my life at that point.
Yeah.
It was like my mom had to do both roles. But I did live with my grandparents, and the only male figure I had was my grandfather. But,
yeah.
there's a huge age gap and age difference in grandfather and son that, there's just some things that you just don't feel comfortable talking about with your grandfather.
Right.
It's just kind of like this odd connection. He's not really my father, but he's only the only father figure I had. That's why I asked a lot of just random people online of these questions, because I thought I really didn't have anyone else to turn to. I was stuck, and it was at that point. So my mom and I have a really good relationship. Every day I was in college, we talked every day. I know most parents or most kids, when they go off to college, are like, bye.
Yeah.
It's like you never hear from them again. But we just had such a really close bond and have had a really good experience. Is she down my neck 24/7? Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm her main worry in life that she has to really worry about. So we have a really good bond. And, she's told me that she said whatever path I go down, whether it's if I marry a man, marry a woman, she would love me no matter what.
Yeah,
and
that's good.
That was just one of those things of I think a lot of LGBTQ kids don't have. I think that's one of the main worries that they have, but she's been real supportive. And, this is not something that I put on brand.
You talking about your grandfather kind of throws a little memory into me here. that I haven't thought about for years. So I'm not close with either part of my family, my maternal side, my paternal side, for vastly different reasons. And so, but I remember about 5 years ago, my grandfather, my mom's stepdad, he needed a ride to the doctor. I said, I'll take you, no problem at all. And this is when we were all still kind of kosher with each other. And I remember him asking kind of questions. And I was dating my now husband. We were dating at the time, but I remember the questions were coming off kind of like a little prying, like asking about certain things and kind of asking about almost prying about who I was dating and everything like that. And I didn't know his views at the time. And so I kind of kept it very vague. And I was like, I'm not going to say anything. And then come to find out, my grandfather is a very liberal, very open. He was a very much of a hippie, Woodstock era hippie of, peace, love, and just do whatever you want to do kind of person. And so I kind of get what I can relate a little bit of like the uncertainty of the generational gap and being able to openly talk about being queer or being bisexual with this person who grew up in the era that it was not accepted. It was very taboo, and it was ostracized as a queer person.
Yeah, I don't. It's one of those things where I don't flaunt a lot of that out there. If someone asks me like, "What do you identify as?" I say it, and then just kind of carry on with the conversation.
Sure.
I think for the longest time I was curious. I was kind of had my own turn straight curious, and people were like, "What is that?"
Yeah.
They'd ask those weird questions, and then I went to this like exploring, and that seemed to be that got more of like, "Oh, okay." They didn't ask any follow up question. It
Yeah.
was just like, okay, I understand. And then I think about a few months ago, I was like, I think I'm bi. So I
Yeah.
did come out as bi, but I didn't make like this huge social media post and flaunt it all over social media of like, this is my coming out story. It's one of those things where if someone asked me my gender identity or sexual identity,
Yeah.
I would say it in that at that point and just carry on with the conversation. I don't flaunt it on social media or just like brag and make 500 videos about it since I've come out like some people do. For me, I don't want that to be my whole personality.
And I think coming out, everybody has a different coming out journey. I'm with you. I don't have social media. You will find me nowhere online except for this podcast. And that is by design. I just don't care to be on the internet. I don't care for people to know who I am. Again, unless you're going to find this podcast and listen to it. I didn't have a big coming out thing. I remember when I told my mom that I was bisexual and I was dating a man, and this is when my husband and I were dating the first time, she was like, well, are you, like, she leaned back against the car door and she looked at me and she goes, well, are you gay? And I said, not always. I said, sometimes, it just depends on the flow of the day. And I didn't do a big coming out. My aunt and uncle, who are my closest family, literally, I talk to my aunt every single day. She's her and my uncle are I live 7 minutes from them. I'm always over at their house. We're always helping them. They're the closest family I have. And when I started dating my husband, I didn't tell her I was bisexual. I didn't tell her anything about my identity. I just started dating him. I just started bringing him around more. And then my aunt looks at me one day and she goes, I really like that Mark guy. And I said, yeah, me too. She goes, he's a good one. Keep him. And that was that. And I was like, all right, moving on. Like, here we are. Yeah.
Like,
and I
noted.
yeah, and I was like, I got in the car. I remember I got in the car, I drove home and I was a little teary-eyed and I called Mark and I was like, I think Aunt Pat knows about you. And he goes, well, what do you mean? I said, and I told him the story. I told him just that. And he goes, oh, she definitely knows. And so I mean, my aunt and I have had some drinks here and there past then, and we've talked. And she goes, I always thought you were just a little different than everybody else. And that's what she's told me before. And I said, yeah, a little bit. She goes, and that's just what makes you you. And then that's the conversation. And I was like, yeah, you know what? That's what makes us us. The fact that we are just who we are. We're living our lives. We're living our authentic selves and being who we want to be openly, loudly. Now that we have podcasts, we can be as loud as we want. And, and no one is going to silence us. No one's going to make us a ghost because we're out here. We're doing it. We're out and proud.
Yeah. And this was something that it was interesting because when I went off to college and I actually lived with roommates, which was interesting.
Yeah.
And I was I remember this one night they were drinking. I was sober because I was not at that age to drink yet. I was about to be 21 in like a few months, but They
So
drank.
I gotta pause real quick. You were a good kid. I mean, you didn't like sneak nothing or anything. Oh my God, you are a saint. Noah is a saint, y'all. You listening out there?
When you live in a household where you're just the spotlight 24/7, it's
Yeah,
hard to sneak into. And even when I went off to college, it was one of those things of like, I've waited this long, I can wait a few more months till I'm 21. I knew that living with roommates, it would be different
yeah.
but they were respectful. They never at all forced anything on me. They never forced drinks down my throat when they
Oh,
were at the
good.
parties. They didn't force drugs because most of them vaped, but one of my roommates smoked marijuana. So he would just jokingly be like, want to hit? And,
Yeah,
it'd just be like jokingly, but never in a way like forced me to do anything.
yeah. If you said no, then no was no, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they were like,
absolutely.
okay, that's fine. And, I got a lot of respect from them just because of that. Being like, just telling them, like, no, I'm okay. And they're like, okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. And then they just go over here and they're just like wild, crazy, just put on a show for me basically for the rest of the night. But they were really respectful. But there was one night in particular, I just remember we were all sitting in the living room there, and my roommates were either really tipsy or they were just drunk at this point already. And they were just like, we've been talking. And this is obviously the brain cells were working very hard here at this
Yeah.
point, trying to form the sentence. They're like, so are you gay or are you not? And, I could tell that they were drunk at
Oh,
that
yeah.
point, and I
I
was
love the
like,
directness, though. I can respect it a little bit.
I was like, okay. And I was honest with them at that point. I said, I'm exploring.
Yeah.
I'm out there now with them being drunk. If this calculated, if this ingrained in their head, I don't know. They never asked that question again after that night. So I
Yeah.
don't even know if they even remember the conversation
Yeah.
or remember the answer I gave them, but they were just bold about it. I told them honestly, and I looked at it, and I sat back and I thought, did I just answer that question honestly to them? And I thought, was I just open?
Yeah.
Like,
How freeing was that? I mean, just being able to just say, "Here, I'm just doing this, man. Like I'm trying to figure it out too."
yeah, I honestly didn't really have like a felt any kind of way, It was just like, yeah, I did it. Next question.
I love that so much because now knowing Noah how hard adolescence was for you and hearing about the struggles you had, especially with your mental health and everything, and then to have these roommates who they kind of sound like a little bit of party animals, I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, they were.
Yeah, we have the
I
party
had
animals.
videos,
Yeah.
had
um
evidence.
but I'm just saying that you have these wonderful party animal kind of roommates, and they come up to you and they're just direct with you, and you are direct back, and you feel nothing of other than, anyways, moving on. That's it. That's all people need. That's all we need as queer people is to have that just, yeah, man, like I'm like you. I just happen to maybe like this a little bit different than you like. And I think that's where you were, and what a beautiful feeling that at least on my end, receiving the story, I think it's a beautiful story.
Yeah, the only thing that I hate a lot though is that that's kind of the big question everyone asks me though when they first meet me, and it's just like, of all the 5,000 questions that you can ask me, that's like top 3 for you.
Yeah.
So it gets annoying every once in a while because I remember there was like this, we were playing Jenga, and there was a girl that was kind of over at our place, and she just asked, and I just kind of rolled my eyes and kind of gave like a half lie, half truth at that point of like, I just
Yeah.
kind of gave an answer just to give an answer.
Well, everybody's obsessed with sexuality. And I think a lot of it has to do with when you're still figuring yourself out. You're obsessed with the sexuality because you want to find somebody that either sees sexuality as you do, as like you, right? We want to find out the gay people. We want to find out the straight people if we're straight. We want to find those queers and lesbians or bisexuals. And when we look at somebody and and we say, I can't figure that person out, the very first thing is always sexuality because we want to know, are you somebody that I can flirt with or back and forth? And I think, especially in the height of that college age, that's where they're
Mm,
looking for, I think. As you get older, definitely now that you're out of college, we're in our adult life, somebody asking that as the first question, I would 100% agree with you as like the top 3, looking at them going, you couldn't think of anything more creative to ask me?
right.
I
Yeah.
absolutely agree with you there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't really ask that now. That is not one of the few questions that they ask me anymore because I think I'm just like, at this point, I'm just like, here to listen to the podcast and just get your own interpretation. You know,
There
it's
you
like,
go.
just get your own interpretation.
Yeah.
I'm tired
And
of
you
answering.
have well, and you have that avenue now where you can just be like, listen to episode 1, 2, and 3, and then just don't ask me again. Also, your viewership goes up that way.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a smart marketing
Yeah,
technique.
there you go. Be like, you have questions, follow this link, listen to top 3, and then move on.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, Noah, what else? So besides podcasting, I mean, you say you have a bachelor's in journalism, and does podcasting, so for you, it sounds like you're busy. I mean, you're recording constantly though, right?
I am. You know, it was funny getting into podcasting because it's not what I wanted to do full time. I graduated from Auburn in 2024 in December with my bachelor's in journalism, and mostly I wanted to kind of pursue that career. I really wanted to be a talk show host at the time, and a lot of people to get experience either had to work in radio or something that was kind of interview based. And I thought,
Yeah.
okay, great. I have a bachelor's degree. That wouldn't be difficult.
Yeah.
Well,
Welcome to the world.
I was very humbled and was like, "It's not that easy."
Yeah.
I actually ended up working at a trampoline park because that was about the only place that would accept me. So it's actually been about a year. I get this random email from a guy that the name had never met before, had never heard of him. I I thought it was another scam job email because I
Sure.
actually fell victim to a scam email before for a journalism degree. So I thought, oh, another job scam. But
Yeah.
his name, and I can say his name because he knows me, I know him. And his name was Alex Sanfilippo. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And he basically had reached out to me. He said, hey, I'm so-and-so. I worked for this company called Podmatch, which was kind of like a podcasting network. He
Yeah.
said, I heard some of your episodes of your podcast and thought that you would be a really good fit for our network. Would you be interested in maybe joining my network? And I thought, scam. But then I thought, well, I said, hold up.
Yeah.
It's for podcasting. I said, I've not got a podcast thing. I said, this is a sign. So I looked into it. Of course, I looked into Podmatch and I was like, okay, let me see what it's all about. I didn't see one negative review about it. I didn't see any, even a 4-star review. And I thought,
Yeah.
okay, this looks promising. This looks kind of a sign. And then it said that you could get paid. And I thought,
Yeah.
I said, okay.
Yeah.
So I had just got fired from the trampoline part because I hated it.
Yeah.
I worked there all of a week and got fired because I hated it. So,
Well,
so it was, was so sad. I wore black for about a few days, but
yeah. You gotta mourn it, girl. You gotta mourn it.
and I emailed Alex back and I said, okay, I'm interested in signing up. I'll give it a shot. And honestly, every interview that I've posted has come from Podmatch. All these interviews, all the guests that I've had on the show have come through there. Of course, now with me learning more about the podcasting community and everything, I've learned a lot more about where to go look for guests now, and I get emails now. So, but at first it was just solely through that network, and it was just a really good platform. He has such a good network base for indie podcasters that are wanting to get their podcasts up there and going. I firmly do believe that a lot of my viewership and a lot of the reasons why my podcast is has been heard everywhere has been through Podmatch and by them because of how the reach that they do.
Yeah.
And it was just like a huge honor to be able to be on the platform and have him listen to a podcast. And he actually left me a review on Apple Podcast. He was the first person to leave me a review on Apple. And I was just like, I said, oh my Lord, I've made it.
Yeah.
But the good thing about it was after I had joined the platform, he was one of the first few guests I had on the podcast. And I interviewed him. It was just at the time I thought, I have a celebrity coming on the podcast. No one talked to me for the day. I was like, this is it. And we had a great conversation. And within, I think a month or two on the thing, I was in the top 10 of popular podcasts on the network. I was, I think number 2 is the highest I've ever been. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm number 2 on the leaderboard. I was like, hello? I was like, no one talked to me for the day.
Yeah.
It was just a surprise to wake up one morning and you just look and you're number 2 on the leaderboard and you're just whoa. Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, for you, that's got to be such an elating feeling, right? And we talked earlier about dopamine hits when we talk about addiction to pornography and stuff, but what a dopamine hit when, Noah, you look back at where you've come from Ghost to number 2 in a podcast platform. I mean, that just shows that all this time you've had something to say, you've had meaningful words and a meaningful conversation. And you know what? Everybody growing up that missed out on that, shame on them. Because look where you're at now. Shame on them. And now look at you. Wonderful.
Yeah, I put a lot of hard work into what I've done while everyone else just spent time in the bedroom. But, eh,
Yeah,
they're
it's working.
repopulating the world.
They're
doing some good, but
yeah, they're making more gay babies. We can only hope. I couldn't help that. Whenever anybody gets upset about gay kids and everything, I go, well, straight people make gay kids, move on with life.
Yeah.
Just, I'm not a biologist, but I did take 1 semester of biology. So I love it. Well, Noah, as we wrap up and everything, I want to tell everybody and I want everyone to hear from you because, again, you have wonderful things to say. So, Noah, what does pride mean to you?
I think just being true to yourself and just be happy of who you are and not really give 2 shits about what people have to say about you. It's all about happiness to me. It's being proud of who you are and don't let anyone try to take that spotlight or happiness away from you. Shine bright like a diamond, be the best rainbow.
You're like, I'm going to have a Rihanna song stuck in my head. I'm going to have some Judy Garland stuck in my head.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
But just be happy and don't let anyone take that happiness away from you.
Absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely. Happiness is key, right? And finding that happiness and finding what makes you happy is so important in this world that we live in.
It really, really is. Really is.
Well, Noah, I appreciate you taking the time today to come out, talk about us, talk about mental health, and look at everything and look at the struggles that you went through and be vulnerable with us today. You told us about your mental health struggles and look where you have come. I mean, I know we have dark days. Everybody has a dark day. We can work through it, whether we have help, mental health. I know mental health is huge for you. Mental health is huge for me. My kids have both gone through therapy and it's been wonders. It's been helpful for everybody involved. And therapy is a great thing. And I love that you're so candid about it as well. Your podcast, Lethal Venom, again, for anybody who wants to listen to the most, I would say, random array of topics, because you never know what guest is going to come on next. Listen to Lethal Venom with Noah May. It is a beautiful podcast, wonderful things. Noah, where can everybody find you? I mean, I've plugged the podcast, but where can everyone find you if they want to come find you?
The easiest way would just be to go through my website, noahspodcast.com, NOAHSPODCASTS.com. That was really hard for me to spell.
And he's a college graduate.
so bad for me to spell. Oh my God, that might be the biggest fail I've ever done. But
don't worry, we're also not going to edit that out at all. It's going to be a raw dog moment.
Oh boy, blooper for me, I guess.
Yeah,
I just gotta. Just go to my website. All my links to my podcast and where to find it's all on there. And my socials are all on there as well. So everything that you want to know about the podcast and everything, it's basically on the website. So just go there for everything and anything.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Noah. Thank you again for coming, being vulnerable with us, talking about mental health, talking to us about your journey. It's been beautiful. And as always, everyone, thanks for listening to Everyone's a Little Queer. We will see you next time. Bye.